Welcome, everybody, to an episode with your dietitian, Astrid. Today, we are talking with Nick Shaw from RP Strength. He is someone that I've been looking up to for many years because he's done a amazing job putting together one of the most amazing companies that I look up to for anything that has to do with nutrition, training, fitness, and evidence base, all things related to
Mhm.
exercise. Now, I have to ask you, Nick, before I also tell you welcome to the show,
Yep.
who is Nick and why
Mm.
you do what you do and why
Boy,
you
that's a really,
gotten to this point in your career?
yeah. Boy, that's a really loaded question. First of all, thank you for having me on. Great to be here. Great to chat with you. Gee whiz, boy, that could go back to like childhood type stuff. I don't know. I've always been a pretty driven person. Always kind of been into fitness since I was about, I don't know, 13 or so. And I think it's led to some pretty cool stuff. I'm pretty proud of how things have turned out. And I grew up in like a really small town, and to, grow into something that's helped RP reach a lot of people and help a lot of people. Like I think it's really cool. I'm super proud of it. And yeah, I think it's cool that we've helped a lot of people. Yeah, that's always number one. So that's the best part of it.
So, what was the turning point for you to start building RP? Perhaps let's just start there.
Yeah, yeah, it was in New York City. So I was hired as a personal trainer out of college and realized after a while that I was having to literally go all over New York City. You'd have a couple people that you train here, a couple people that you train there, and like here and there means midtown versus downtown, across town, and you got to take the subway and you got to do all this. It was just really demanding, and I just was like, is this really what I want to do with the rest of my life? I was like, man, this would be hard. And for the people that do train, awesome, because it's just really hard in New York. You'd probably have to really be established and just have all your people at one spot in one place. It might be a little bit easier, but even if you're one of the best trainers in the world, you're usually working with clients before they go to work and after they get out of work. So it just becomes really long days. And of course, you could always hire coaches or trainers under you, but basically Mike left New York after a year. We went there together. We worked together. This is Dr. Mike, of course. He went to ETSU to get his PhD, and I stayed, and we kept kind of referring people back to one another. He was doing online coaching while he was at school. I was training people in person. So we were always referring people back and forth. And we just said, why don't we just start a little company together? And that way it's just all one thing. We don't have to refer people like to a, quote unquote friend. It's just like, no, no, no. Him and I work together. So that was really truly the start of RP. And I think like 2011, I believe, is the technical starting date.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was like the realization of like I don't want to keep living this life where I'm going all over the New York City all the time, getting up super early to go train people and then potentially staying out really late. I'm just like, there were some positives though to it because usually when things slow down, like late morning or early afternoon, you get to work out yourself. So like that was a plus, but it was long days, lots of work, lots of travel. And then once we got a little bit in online coaching, sort of the light bulb went on. It's like, oh, I want to do this more because I actually don't have to run all over the city. I can stay at home. I can have a much more flexible, enjoyable schedule. And so that was really like, okay, let's go full in on this. Let's do what we can to really get this going. Circa 2011 or so.
When you think about RP and the essence of its vision and where it started, where it's headed, how is, in your perspective, what's been the evolution of that vision from where it started and now you see how it has been evolving over the years to tackle new technologies, new ways to reach more
Mhm.
of those who want to engage with evidence-based fitness, knowing what to do, improve their body
Yeah.
composition, their physique, their nutrition. You started writing some amazing books in
Mhm.
conjunction with Dr. Mike, including the RP Diet 2.0 and others as well. So
Mhm.
talk to me a lot more about that evolution and that progression of that vision.
Yeah, so when Mike and I were training in New York City, so we were personal trainers, but we also were, sort of aspiring bodybuilders at the time when we saw a lot of how people were training. We just thought it was really interesting because it didn't really seem like people would do things for a purpose. It's just kind of like, hey, let's just do this because. And you would sort of ask people why, and they didn't really have great answers. And so like we thought we had a pretty good way to train. And so what we wanted to do was, hey, we want to be able to walk the walk. So like we want to be big and strong ourselves, but also maybe understand a little bit of like the nuance and the science behind stuff, because then you can walk the walk and talk the talk. Because usually, and especially at that time, you would get one or the other. And I mean, a lot of times you still kind of get one or the other now, but I think again, you talk about evolution, where things were evidence-based community-wise in like 2011, 2012 is completely different than now. Like it has grown massively. And I'd like to think we're, a small part of that, which is really cool, but totally different nowadays. But the big thing was when you can walk the walk and talk the talk. So we were like, well, what if you have like a PhD and you're a very high level athlete? Man, it is really hard to argue with folks like that because if you're someone that just talks the talk and you maybe don't look the part, it's really easy to get dismissed or some stuff like that. The people that take training really seriously, they'll overlook you and they'll be like, no, you don't have the proof in your own physique. And then on the flip side of that, you get the people that, are smart and they care about stuff and they want to learn. And sometimes you go talk to, bodybuilders, quote unquote, the meatheads, and you ask them questions and you don't really get a whole lot out of them. You're like, I'm not sure what value that provided. Because again, if you try to do what they do, well, it could just be genetics or something. They don't like kind of know or really understand. Yeah, they train hard, which is a huge part of it. But when you have both, and that's what we wanted at RP. We wanted to walk the walk, talk the talk. So we have high level academics and high level athletics. And you combine both of those, it's really the best of both worlds. That was really the early on vision. And, I think we did a pretty good job at that because we've got a lot of people like our coaches are PhDs, some are world-class athletes and all that. We've developed some pros, Jared's a pro, I'm a pro, Mike's PhD. So like there's a good combination of walk the walk, talk the talk.
Thinking about nowadays, RP as it is, and everything that has come from it around the educational content, the resources, everything that has been created, where do you see that that's headed when it comes to content creation, resource generation? Do you feel like is there anything missing?
The unfortunate part is a lot of that stuff's dependent on third parties. It's like Instagram, Google, YouTube. They start to change stuff around, especially with AI. It's really hard to predict where things might be headed. And we see that a lot. The algorithms change and you have to change and adapt with it. And sometimes you're not really privy to any of that information. And it takes a while to sort of understand what's going on because what you were doing doesn't quite work anymore. But, sometimes there's just a little ebbs and flows of things. So then you sit tight for a while, kind of keep just doing the same things. So it's a little hard to predict on that front, where things are likely headed. I mean, just the rise of AI. If you go to Google and you search for something, Google AI gives you a preview, kind of answers it right for you. You don't necessarily have to go to the sites to look for it. So across the board, from what I've heard, what I understand is a lot of times people's like traffic is down because, well, why do I need to go click on an article if Google AI gives me the summary in 2 seconds right there? So there's a lot of changes there, and a lot of that's good. I'm not even arguing that's a bad thing because we want information and we want information fast. So there could very well be something where just giving information isn't quite enough in the future. It might become more of what is the personal story behind it? Because that's not really something AI can do. But if you're like, hey, how much protein should I have? AI can answer that pretty quickly. And then, do you need to go read some 3,000 word blog to understand? I don't know. Some people will, of course, but a lot of times people just want that information right then and there. So, there's a lot of complexities I think coming with AI. So just have to be able to, roll with it, adapt, and do your best.
Talk to me more about the aspect. Let's move to more of a psychology mindset and self-leadership, which is something that you have written before about and preach a lot about. And one of the things that you have mentioned before is that usually motivation is quite unstable, fleeting,
Mhm.
but discipline is a choice. So, what systems or rituals do you personally rely on when motivation is not there?
I'm gonna give a little bit of nuanced answer because I've been training for so long that it's now part of my identity. It's no longer like I don't need discipline really to go and train. I don't like need discipline to eat well. I've been doing it for so long. It's just part of who I am. And so that's kind of like the ultimate end goal. But for a lot of people, when you're just first starting out, you have that inspiration and motivation. Like maybe you're not in shape, but then you see some people getting in shape, or you see something cool on, social media, and you're like, oh man, I want that. And that's great and that's awesome. And you should like harness that. And then you should try to, the best you can, try to develop some systems to make it easier on yourself. Because what's really interesting is it's kind of like a paradox. The people that have the best discipline use discipline usually the least because they kind of set their environment up in a way that they don't need it as much. So you can think of the examples of if you take meal prep to work. And let's say you work in an office and people are constantly bringing in pizza and donuts and all these snacks and M&Ms and Rice Krispies and right, like all these crazy things. If you don't have food with you there and you happen to be hungry, like you're going to eat that food. You're human, right? Now, again, a little bit of that might be curbed with GLPs, which is a really, really interesting thing. But again, it goes back to you sort of like pre-plan, and now you have a plan because you see all that stuff. Now, you might still be tempted to eat it, and you might still even eat a little bit of it. But if you have your meal right then and there, you're like, oh, I'm just going to eat this. Like, this was planned for me. This is what I have. This is what I'm going to do. So that's usually like a good example. Or the other example is people talk about like wanting to get up in the morning and go run or something like that. Well, like you set your shoes out there, you set your clothes out there, you have your little watch right there, and your alarm goes off, and you just kind of do it because you make it easier. Because if you wake up and you're like, I don't want to drive to the gym or whatever, it's like, okay, you can convince yourself very easily not to. But if all your stuff's setting right there and all that, like, it just makes it a little bit easier. And so those people, they develop the systems where they kind of pre-plan a little bit so they don't have to use willpower. Because if you're always relying on willpower, it's just really, really tough. And eventually you're probably going to crack and give in. So you kind of use that early inspiration and motivation to help set up like consistent habits. And if you do those habits for a while, and it's probably going to take a long while, but then eventually it just becomes more of what you do, kind of becomes more of who you are. So think of it of, someone that's like new to running and they're like, hey, I run. You talk to someone that competes in races and stuff like that, and they're like, I'm a runner. It's not I run, it's I am a runner. Just like I would tell people, well, I guess I am a bodybuilder, even though I don't necessarily compete per se anymore. But like that's what I would tell people. I was like, yeah, I'm a bodybuilder. So like these are the things that a bodybuilder does. They lift weights most days of the week. They eat a pretty well diet, and they stay active. So they stay lean. Like these are just parts of things that I do every single day, and I don't really have to think about it a whole lot. Just stuff that I do.
Initially, is as it's like you say, is something that is not in your nature. It's not who you are.
Mhm.
It's not what you do. But the more consistent you are doing those things, and also adding or sprinkling some of that in your life on a day-to-day basis, you also enjoy doing them. It becomes part of, now this is who I am. Now it sort of like takes a while, and it
Yeah,
definitely has to be something that the person really wants to become or needs to become into. So when it comes to that identity, when it comes to long-term success, what are some of your best tips to shift that identity from someone who tries, let's say, to diet or be healthier or
yeah.
become the best version of themselves physically, athletically, to someone who actually becomes that person?
I think the number one thing you can do is get around like-minded people. I think that's why the internet has been such a remarkable place for people. Because let's say you live out in like rural America. You don't have a lot of people around you that are into fitness or self-improvement, or you come from a not so great neighborhood and sort of no one's really doing this stuff. It is really, really hard to be isolated and sort of by yourself. But if you can get on the internet, you can find groups. Maybe you don't have to be near those people, but you can still see what those people are doing. You can draw inspiration, you can draw motivation, you can ask these people questions. You can just develop that community sense. And you're like, oh, there are other people out there like me that want to do the same things. This is really cool. And then it just sort of leads you more and more down that path because you're probably going to start spending more time with those people. So get around like-minded people. And, part of that is just like part of your environment, of course. So if you get around more people that are doing similar things, want to go places that you're trying to go, you're just going to be more successful. Because if you're always around people that want to be negative around you, mm, like that wears on you after a while. And it's like that gnawing at your discipline. And after a while, like those people, they keep putting bad food in front of you, or they're like, oh, stay, let's watch another episode of TV, let's rather than going to bed early or whatever it is. So like the more you can get around people that share similar goals, you're going to be way more likely to be successful. So I think that's probably the best thing that people can do. Because then you see other people that have probably been doing it longer that sort of have that identity already built in, and you start to see that, right? So then it becomes a little bit of like a role model in some regards. So like hands down, that part, do that.
So that would be your number one tip. What about another two tips? So we talk about community and support, environment, setting up that environment for success. Is there anything else that you feel like it is important for that identity and that success in building that person that you want to become?
I don't know about two more tips because to me that's really the big one because I always think, well, you could get accountability, but that again, that comes from the community aspect because you can have other people hold you accountable. Maybe another one would be, and this might sound a little weird, but you actually sort of like commit and you invest in it. You put resources into it. So I can't tell you the number of times that I've given people free nutrition plans or free, training plans, and they never use it because it's not valuable to them. They didn't spend any of their time or money or resources to put, to go into it. But then all of a sudden, if you pay for something and you've got skin in the game, you're more likely to use it. So again, like commit to yourself, invest in yourself. Now, again, not everyone can spend tons of money, but you don't even necessarily need to spend tons of money, right? Because you've got things like apps that are fairly cheap. Like get a habit tracking app that costs you a few dollars, something like that. Like just as easy as that to start. You don't have to spend crazy amounts, but just do something. And again, when you spend a little bit of money, it sort of holds yourself accountable to it because you're like, well, I don't want to waste that. So that would be another thing that I would say. And then get around those people that are similar values, similar lifestyles, similar things that you want to do. And now you're talking. Now you're probably going to start getting somewhere.
Something that I feel like it is hard to wrap your head around is when you're starting your journey, especially if there's weight loss involved or like a big transformation in the middle of where you're at and who you need
Mhm.
to become. And visualization is something that sometimes tends to be quite
Sure.
hard because let's say I needed to lose 100 pounds and I just can't see myself on the other side. And to me, like I just don't see myself doing everything that a person 100
Yeah.
pounds lighter would do. So how do you think about that separation and
Yeah.
that transition from where you're at right now and how far you have to go, or even just try to visualize that person that you want to become, but you're not there yet. You're not that person yet. But
Yeah. Yeah.
how do you show up as that person in order for you to become that person?
Yeah. It's really, really hard. It is really, really hard because like when you're going through just some shit, it's really hard to visualize yourself on the other side of it. So what you have to do is you have to chunk it up into really small bits and pieces because it's so easy to become overwhelmed. And this is not just diet or training. You can talk about anything in life, right? You're going through tons of stress in your life. It is so easy to get overwhelmed. You have to be like, okay, I can't focus on a year from now. I really just have to focus on what's here right in front of me right now today. Like, what can I do today to get moving on that track? And it is a very hard thing for people to do because when you have that inspiration, you have that motivation, you want to do everything all at once. You're like, no, I don't want to just go jog a half mile. I'm going to go jog 5 miles, right? Because I'm so motivated. It's like you kind of have to resist that urge a little bit and you have to just start chunking it up and you have to be like, okay, I'm going to just start with something small. And maybe it's I go walk for a mile. Or like I buy a step tracker and I aim for X number of steps per day. Those are really good starts. And then all of a sudden, like after a week, you've started doing that on a consistent basis. And then like maybe you start adding in something else where you're like, okay, now I'm going to meal prep a little bit. You might have to spend some time researching it if you've never done it before. But that is really the hard part because if you only visualize the ultimate end outcome and it's so far away, most people get discouraged after, a little bit, whether it's a week or two or like a month, because they're like, I'm so far away from where I want to be that I might as well just give up and not even do it. But if you're like, you know what? Rather than focus on 100 pounds, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to start walking a mile every day and I'm going to, skip the soda that I usually have at night or like something, like whatever that something is. It's gonna be whatever that person wants it to be, but just like one little thing. And then all of a sudden you start to get a little bit of momentum. You're like, oh, cool. Like I checked off like all 7 days this week. Wow. You look at the scale and maybe you're down a couple pounds. So you go from 100 pounds to like, okay, My goal is at the end of week one to be down like 2 pounds or 3 pounds, whatever it is. Like at the end of month one, I want to be down 10 pounds. And like when people start on a journey like that, usually you lose weight a little bit quicker because you start to clean up some stuff, you lose some bloat or whatever. So like that's actually good because then it gives you a little bit of momentum. And then you have momentum, it starts building. And then you start to believe more in yourself. You're like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. Okay, now I have proof. Okay, look what I've done. I've already lost 10 pounds. Then you just try to chunk the next goal. And you're like, okay, well, now the next goal is, was it 10 pounds now to get to 20 pounds? So that's usually how you do it. It just requires these little sub goals that, again, kind of. So one of my favorite books of all time is A Slight Edge. I actually probably need to read it. I actually might sit down and read it tonight because shit, I need this stuff in my own life right now. But it's all about you just like do these little tiny things day in and day out. And like they don't seem like much in the grand scheme of things. They really don't. But when you start stacking days upon days upon days upon weeks upon months upon years, holy crap. Now you've got something really, really going. And that's really how you get those crazy outcomes in the long run. But it doesn't start by like, trying to do it all at once. It's just not how it works. Like, that, I know that. I mean, but it's tempting because you are so motivated when you begin, you want to just knock it out of the park. And it's hard to convince people to slow it down and take it easy.
You want results as soon as possible, and it's
Everyone does.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and it's really hard to okay, I need to slow down, and that's where you you face the challenges of perfectionism
Mhm.
and wanting to do everything at once. Is it all or is nothing? So
Oh yeah.
how do you deal with that all or nothing mindset? Because I see it all the time with
Oh
my
yeah.
clients, and
Oh yeah.
they either do it or don't do it at all. And if it's not what they should be doing or what is expected to them, or like we put ourselves like high demand and high expectations of what we
Yeah.
should be aiming for or doing on a daily basis. And if we're not doing what is required, or we're not giving our 100% every single fucking day, then I'm not good enough. I might just not
Yeah.
do it at all.
Yeah. It's honestly a very hard mindset to overcome because a lot of people do have that all or nothing.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think part of it is setting expectations up front. If you're coaching someone, like, listen, I know you want to lose 50 pounds, but let's pump the brakes. Let's just get you to, 20 pounds. It's just really, really hard. And you have to basically preach patience and having a more long-term time horizon, which just does not really jive with today's social media world, where you just, again, because you're seeing people's usually end outcomes, where they've been at it for 5 years or 10 years, or they're just genetic freak anomalies. And so then people aren't like that. And then they get really discouraged when they are working hard for a while, because imagine you're like just getting into basketball and you look up to LeBron James. You're like, well, why am I not 6'9", 250 and can, dunk a basketball? Like, well, it's like there's a reason he's one of the best of all time. He's a freak. He's the outlier. So you just have to go back to just consistency. And one of my favorite things is always reminding people consistency is more important than perfection. Because perfection usually leads to a short-term burst of intensity, and then you fizzle out over the long run because you just can't do it. Like people cannot sustain perfection or this high level of intensity, right? There's a reason why sprinters only run so far because guess what? Like the intensity kind of gives out and you just can't keep going. So it's the same mindset when it comes to, and really this applies to all things in life, not just fitness. But if you think about, starting a business or you think about, investing money, well, yeah, of course. Yeah, you want to be a multimillionaire, but guess what? It usually starts with investing a few dollars up front. And then all of a sudden that few dollars becomes 10, becomes 100. Like that's how it works. It does not work where you just, unless you win the lotto, I guess. But, most of those people end up going broke anyways, which probably a good lesson there of like, because they didn't have good habits, they didn't have good systems around them. So yeah, it's a really complicated question, but it's really convincing people to have patience and helping set the expectations up front. And then instead of thinking in terms of a short-term time horizon, start to think of it in more of a long-term time horizon.
One of the things that I find that is likely a very important determinant of success for people that are trying to diet their way down to a new body composition, new body weight, is mastering consistency, but also
Mhm. Yeah.
managing hunger. Now, you emphasize making decisions based on hunger, performance, recovery, and not just scale trends. But how do you help people differentiate between what true hunger is versus someone who is experiencing cravings or boredom or emotional hunger when it comes to making auto-regulated decisions?
I'm reminded of a funny story that Jared Feather, he's one of our coaches. He's an FBB pro. I don't know the exact quote, but I can sort of give the gist of it. And I think a client was complaining to him once that they were just so hungry. And he's like, okay. He said, go take a scoop of like unflavored casein protein and mix it up in some water and eat it. And the person was like, that's disgusting. And he was like, you're not that hungry then. Now, that's a bit of an extreme outlier, but it helps paint a picture. So, like, what do you do? Some of it comes down to a lot of habits and just what people are used to doing. Because, I've seen this. Normally, if my kids and I are watching TV at night, I usually will have like my Fairlife 42 gram. That's usually like my nighttime shake. And I'll maybe have some like pretzels and some nuts with it. And I've sort of established this routine that that's kind of what I do. Well, like every time we sit down, what do my kids do? They immediately ask for food because now that's kind of reinforced, right? Of like, oh, yeah. And so usually they want like popcorn or ice cream or something, most of the time it's like, that's fine. But that goes back to like, well, now you're sort of setting these patterns up. And so a lot of times people have these patterns for whatever reason, or maybe it's because there's a bowl of M&Ms by your office desk. And so you just kind of, you don't even think about it. You just reach over and do it. Well, that just becomes a habit. So again, there's a lot of that you kind of have to get people to break. And you're like, are you just doing that because you're used to doing it, or are you actually hungry? Another good example would be like, sometimes you can kind of meditate on it for a while. I don't know if that's really realistic for a lot of people, but there's what like surf the wave, ride the wave, something like that. It's basically you're like, I'm hungry. I crave this. Okay, give it like a minute or a couple minutes and see if that's still the case before you go do it. Or go for like a 5 minute walk. If you still come back and you really want whatever that was, okay, all right, then you probably were really hungry. But if you come back and you're like, oh, wow, I feel a lot better, or like maybe get an activity, maybe you like read or you do a puzzle or something like that, and then you kind of get your mind distracted off of it, and then all of a sudden, you're not really hungry or whatever it was before.
I think it is also important to know that hunger itself can be trainable because you could be hungry and physically have some signs that your stomach is growling, you actually feel physically wanting to eat. It's not just like a craving for something,
Yeah,
but you can train that hunger as well. Like if you someone who usually says, well, I am not a breakfast person, it's because you've taught your body to not get food at the time. But interestingly, when you start teaching your body that perhaps breakfast is an important way to set up your day for success. If you're not going to be able to eat throughout the day, if you're someone who is unable to have a decent meal at work, maybe just like practically establishing yourself for success. The few times that you start shifting those eating patterns, then you start having hunger pants,
yeah.
and you start getting those signals in the morning. Now, how much do you believe in this hunger is trainable, and how you can use that in your advantage to set yourself for success?
Yeah, I've got a good story on this. So I think I was getting ready for a bodybuilding show, and I hadn't competed in like 9 years. This is 2022, I believe. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to read a lot about like Buddhism and mindfulness and all this. 'Cause I'm going to see like, can I help overcome this? Like, if I get really hungry or something like that, can I overcome it? Can I do something with my mind to try to do that? And I tried really, really hard. And I think in some capacities, like what you're saying is it's a little bit trainable. However, when I got deep into contest prep, I don't care what you wanted to do. There's sometimes there's no way around it. So I think it just depends on how extreme you want to go, which is a good reason to not encourage people to do more extreme diets because it just leads to, not so great outcomes. But yeah, I just remember that. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm hungry. Okay. And I'd be like, oh, it's time to be mindful. That doesn't work when you're like 6% body fat and still trying to get leaner. Like there's some limitations there for sure. But I do think it is somewhat trainable for sure. If you can stop and kind of process it and have some like, self-awareness, for sure. It can be trained a little bit. and don't go to the extremes. So that's one of it. The other interesting part. So now when people ask about hunger, so another personal story would be, so that was a 2022 show. So then in 2023, and again, semaglutide was fairly new, but I got it from like a compounding pharmacy or whatever, and I started using that. And it became not an issue of hunger anymore. It became an issue of just low energy. Because in my opinion, this is just my opinion, other people can disagree with it. Hunger is a solved issue now with GLPs. You can dial it up however you want. If you want to be hungry, cool. You don't have to, if you don't want to be hungry, you can take an amount that basically will not make you hungry. And so when I used that for my contest prep in 2023, it was wild because everything that I used to do, and I'm talking these gigantic salads with tons of fruit to get as much food volume as I possibly could. I'm talking these giant bowls of salad. Like it was disgusting. I have no problem in 2022 doing that. And then you introduce semaglutide in 2023, and holy cow, I couldn't touch near the food volume. And the hunger wasn't an issue. It just became an issue of just like basically being a little bit hangry and just really tired. Because right now we don't have a way to solve that tiredness problem. Because if you eat fewer calories, you're just going to be tired. Now again, and I'm talking about extremes here, but I think it does kind of help paint the picture. So yeah, the hunger one, I really can't. Like, when people ask me about hunger anymore, I can't not mention GLPs. And people are going to be, oh, you're just trying to push medicine. I'm like, not really, but like, if you don't want to be hungry, you don't have to anymore.
I hear where you're coming from, and interestingly, there's more and more GLP versions that are coming to the market, and
Mhm.
now that is ready to try it, and who cares? Like there's so many. Where how do you stand on that and the use of those medications for someone who is trying to become very advanced in I wouldn't say just bodybuilding, because this is not about just competing, but it is also very expensive. It is not widely available in all
Yeah,
countries. So it seems like it is a great hack, but it is a bit far for a lot of people to be readily accessible. So what do you do when you don't actually have access to that? What could be the
yeah.
best next thing?
So my view is a little biased and skewed because I live in the US, and I remember watching a bunch of like major professional league sporting events. Every commercial is about GLPs. It is crazy. You got the Hims, you got the Hers, you got the ads for Manjaro and Wegovy. They're just everywhere. So I'm totally biased, and I'm like, for sure, some people don't have access to them. Totally. I don't know what it's like. You're in Australia, correct?
Yes.
So maybe it's not the same here in the U.S. It's not that hard to get them. I mean, if you want to find them, you can find them. I feel like so. I'm definitely biased on that. So if you cannot have access to them, well, then I think it goes back to like lots of food volume. So you make different food choices. And so my example of the disgustingly big salad with tons of fruit and like cut up chicken in it is a great example because you eat that and it takes you a really long time to eat it. And you're like, this is not even that great. So you can use what is it, the food palpability sort of reward, and you can basically make your foods taste more or less tasty. And if you make them less tasty, some people, a good number of people, won't want to eat more of them. But like it's the example of if you just have one Oreo, like no one can just eat one Oreo, basically. That's like you're just tempting fate, basically. So you just make different food choices. And you try to eat things that fill you up more, just like if you were trying to gain weight, you would make the opposite choices. Like if you're really full, then you would try to drink more calories because, well, you don't want to spend half of your day eating, if you're a gigantic bodybuilder and have to eat 4,000 calories a day. Like it gets old after a while. So it's really just food choices, I think, at that point.
It is tricky. It definitely is. And but I love talking about I think Mike has spoken about the hedonic staircase of
Yeah.
dieting,
Yeah.
where you can use that for your own benefit when depending on where you're at with your goals and the phase
Hmm.
you're going through. It's not going to be the same for someone who is a hard gainer or is trying to build
Yeah.
muscle or in a surplus versus someone who is in deep in dieting for a contest prep. and so how much palatability and monotony in the food
Yeah.
can make a big difference,
Yep.
and how much that can be either help you a lot or help you not at all, depending on where
Yeah.
you're at.
Think of it as like a giant dial, right? And you have the ability to change your food choices and like how tasty stuff is and just like the food amounts and volume itself. So if you're someone that's at a tail end of a mass, say you are a hard gainer, you're doing anything and everything you can to just get in calories. You're probably eating some junk food because there's just no other way to get those calories in. You just can't eat all clean food. On the flip side of that, if you're in contest prep, like you're not eating any of that stuff. You want as much food volume as possible. So again, it's just like it's a dial. It's just how do you want to turn it? And you can sort of end up in the middle too. Because again, a lot of people, you just want to maintain your weight and live like a healthy lifestyle. Probably 80% of your foods, mostly just like, the regular whole foods, lean proteins, fruits and veggies, healthy carbs, stuff like that. But you want to go out with your friends every now and again, have some pizza or something like, hey, that's all part of living a more balanced lifestyle. And in that case, more power to you.
Something that you have spoken or written a lot about is auto regulation and how that applies to training, how that could also apply to dieting. And nowadays is coming a lot more research about menstrual cycle and female cycle syncing with the nutrition
Mhm.
aspect and training. How much do you believe you can auto regulate dieting and your training around that cycle, especially when hunger, water retention, mood shift, everything is so potentially unpredictable and it just depends on the person?
A really good question. I am by no means an expert on this at all. I'll give my current understanding of what I've sort of seen. My best guess would be you try not to auto-regulate too much around that. And from a psychological standpoint, I think that's a slippery slope potentially because it's very easy. It may require like a coach or an outsider perspective because if you're just solely trying to auto-regulate, like let's just say you have a bad day, you're really stressed out or something like that, it's really easy to give yourself more leeway. And so if you're like, oh, okay, once every, 28 days or, something like that, I know there's going to be these, whatever, maybe it's 3 days, maybe it's 4 days, maybe it's 5, maybe some people it's a week, right? Well, it's like now 25% of the time, you're not really on track. And again, I'm by no means a female health expert. So again, I'm shooting a little bit from the hip here, but this is my rough understanding. I think you just have to be really careful about trying to auto-regulate too much into that. I would actually defer to you on this as much more of an expert. So I'd be curious as to what you would say on that. But that's kind of like my rough understanding of it.
I agree. I don't like to rely 100% on auto regulation in these
Mm,
scenarios because it can be on a slippery slope. You probably have to rely on listening to your body, but also on habits and what you
mm,
usually would do regardless of how you feel. Show up, try to do your best, and if when you're executing and doing, you're not there, you're seeing that the biofeedback is not positive, perhaps you still really, really fatigued, that your performance is shit,
yeah.
maybe then
Yeah.
you can adjust and react from there, but not just from the point of, okay, I am just going to listen to my body, and because I just don't feel like
Mhm.
doing it today, I am just not going to do it.
I'm with you. So it's like when people ask me if they have a bad day of training, it's like, oh, well, the program's not working. I'm like, okay, maybe. Like, what else is happening in your life? You really stressed? Did you get bad sleep last night? Kid woke you up or something, right? Like there's a lot of reasons. So usually what I would tell people is like one bad day, don't over-index on it. You have a couple bad days in a row. Now that's more auto feedback, from yourself that you're like, okay, yeah, one day was whatever. Okay, second day was not so great. Okay, now it's 3 bad days in a row. Okay, now auto regulation would say maybe I do take it a little bit easier. Maybe I do give myself a little bit of grace. Maybe I do eat a few more calories or something like that to see if I can't get myself back on the right track when it comes to training. That I think is totally valid. I just for some people, you can't over-index on like one thing, which is why, usually if you're tracking body weight or something like that, you focus more on weekly trends, not like any given day, because the body weight can do all sorts of crazy stuff, especially like you're saying around the female hormonal cycle, I mean, you can get some wild things. So you say you can't over-index too much on any little period. You have to kind of look at the slightly bigger picture, I would say, is a good way to frame it.
Something that is also interesting is someone who has been chronically dieting and restrict and has a restrictive background for so many years. How do we help them to relearn what hunger and fullness cues are without spiraling into I deserve it. Or like this mindset of, "Well, I don't know, I don't think I should be eating this." Or
Mm,
you get it again, this mindset of, I am eating 1400 calories, perhaps is too much and I shouldn't be eating that. When you see someone that's been just dieting for years, because they're coming from a background of trying to lose weight or
mm.
doing things back and forth because they can just not stick to something that is not appropriate or designed for them, or there's so many things that could be impacting people's adherence and actual results. But there is that is this situation with chronic dieters and
Yeah.
fueling properly. So how do we tend to use the strategies to help them relearn what hunger is and fullness cues are, and teaching them it's okay to nourish and eating a lot more than what you've been eating at this point?
Yeah, again, it's really tricky because again, I think for a lot of people that are chronic dieting, from my experience, a lot of what I've seen is they are under eating for certain periods of time. But then, well, if they were really truly under eating, the weight would be trending down. So you kind of have to look at that first and be like, well, okay, you've been the same weight for like 6 months, but you've been trying to diet. Okay, what's really going on here? You got to investigate a little bit further. Because a lot of times, like what I've seen and heard from a bunch of people is they'll like be really good Monday through Friday. And like Friday night into the weekends, of course, and then they go a little bit off the rails. And then it sets up this ridiculous pattern where like, I know I try to tell people this. If you're going to diet, diet. Don't play in this limbo land where you're dieting 5 out of 7 days. You're working really hard and that is right. It is taxing on your system to diet. It is adding fatigue. It is adding stress, all this stuff. And if you do that, well, you sure as shit want the results of it. So don't then self-sabotage yourself on a couple days of the week. So now let's say you lose like 1.5 pounds Monday through Friday, and then you gain it all back because you eat some junk over the weekend. And like, where are you at the end of week one? You're right back to where you started. And then this process just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. And then you go 3, 4 months, you don't get any results, and you're like, well, this dieting thing's just not for me. Well, it's like, that's not true per se, because you're really only, 70% in it. And you probably got to get more up to like 90 or, 85, 90%. Again, we don't need 100% necessarily. And so that's one of the first things I would look at because and again, it's tough, right? Because there's a lot of psychological stuff. And what's really interesting is as you ask this, I find myself thinking, I have not thought about these problems in a long time because we've sort of shifted our demographic a little bit away from people that were like that would chronic diet all the time, to people that are like a little bit more intermediate advanced and like aren't as chronic diet. I think they're interested in eating more for performance because they want to grow muscle, they want to get stronger, they want to, do all these things. So that was this really interesting thing. I remember being on podcasts, years ago where people would ask questions like that, and it was much more relevant. But I feel like we've kind of gotten out of that a little bit at RP, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So what you're saying is that you have somehow shifted the the main quote unquote person that you tend
Yeah.
to work with and at
Avatar
RP.
demographic. Yep.
Yeah, so mainly you are aiming for athletes, people that are really trying to push themselves to get to another level of physique or performance.
Can I say something that might sound a little weird, but like it's technically true, I think. So when we just had a diet app years ago, like before the hypertrophy app, we probably had we probably skewed a little bit more female. And I think the chronic dieting thing is much more of a female issue than a male issue. Please weigh in if you feel differently, but like that's just from my perspective. Because I think a lot of times what is a guy's big issue? It's like, well, I want to get stronger and I want to grow muscle and I want to look bigger. Well, you're usually not doing a lot of chronic dieting if that's the case. And then you start to run into the other example of like the hard gainers. Again, I'm speaking in terms of averages. females, on average, you're going to see more chronic dieters. And then on the male side, you're going to see a little bit more of like the hard gainer approach. Would you say that's accurate, or do you think you have a different take on that?
I do think that that is a little bit of both, just depending on the demographic
Yeah.
and who you talk to. Obesity is an issue across the board, females and
Hmm.
males. Definitely, there's a lot more body image challenges with females, and that's where probably chronic dieting comes along,
Yeah.
adding to the picture menopause,
Yeah.
hormonal transitions around middle age versus males. Yeah, they can struggle with that, but they're not going to get through all these ups and downs hormonally,
Yeah.
and likely they're not
Yeah.
going to struggle so much with that aspect. So
Yeah.
I definitely agree that maybe the gender can be biasing why chronic dieting is more like popular amongst females. But I do believe like there is a little bit of both depending
Sure.
on the population that we're talking and addressing. Um, and it also depends on the health complications that are associated with obesity and weight gain, and sometimes the background, or as you rightly said from the very beginning, their environment and their community and who they're surrounded
Yeah.
with.
Totally.
Because if you don't have readily available evidence-based information, you probably are not going to have the best advice when it comes to dieting or eating healthier, and you will make a lot of mistakes, and you're going to get a lot of bumps on the road. And sometimes I wish 10, 12 years ago when I started my journey, I would have readily available all the information that nowadays it is available. I would have loved to have learned about flexible dieting back then, that
Sure.
I
Totally.
was
Yeah.
able to still make progress without needing to go completely extreme.
Hmm.
That one bad day or one overeating day wouldn't make me fat. I wish I would have learned so
Yeah.
much from what I know now, and what the information nowadays is just so
Yeah.
much more at your fingertips compared to before, where you just needed to rely on really, really good sources, look actively to follow the right people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that easy to find that happy medium that we can see now. So it is.
Because you said 12 or 13 years ago, and that really coincides with like about the time we started RP, because you're absolutely right. It was very hard to find this information. It was very hard to find out who to trust. I feel like nowadays, it's definitely easier now, for sure. However, with the caveat being there's so much information out there now that it's almost how do you filter through some of the bullshit? Because social media rewards polarization. You get people that, because if you're just like, hey, get in shape, you got to do kind of the boring basics. That's not very exciting.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you make that more exciting? Well, you got to have someone like a Dr. Mike who can make all sorts of inappropriate jokes, and like he can just do it on the fly and all that, because it makes it a little bit more exciting, gives it a little more pizzazz, so to speak. But if you don't have that, well, sort of social media in today's day and age rewards the people that instead of saying this, they focus on that one little thing that doesn't really matter, but they make it this huge thing, like seed oils or whatever, and it's like, okay, okay, because that's what it takes. It gets the clicks, it gets the likes, it gets the eyeballs, and all that. So information today, so much better than a decade ago. But it means you have to filter through more, which maybe means AI can help with that. Because if you tell it evidence-based, hopefully it's going to give you better stuff and not, give you the BS stuff.
I agree. I do believe that AI can also, but it will make mistakes. It can be
Sure,
tricky
totally.
sometimes, and it will sometimes agree if you want to really
If you
take a
wanted to,
side.
sure, 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 sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, oh yeah.
because
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
tested sometimes, like I ask about something that could be polarizing, and I kind of like want to play the devil's advocate, and I'll,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
But I do believe like this is the way it should be. Oh, yes, totally right. You are absolutely right. And then you sort of like get it to,
Oh
mm,
yeah,
yeah.
totally. No, no, listen, because I've done that. Yeah, and like it definitely does it wants to kind of please you, so to speak, and it'll because I find all the time it's just like it tells me too many nice things. So a lot of times what I've actually started using it more for is let's say if I get into disagreements or something with someone and I don't understand their viewpoint or perspective, I'm like, I need to understand this because I can't wrap my head around it. So I tell ChatGPT, I give it some of the information, and then I'm like, tell me why I'm wrong, or like tell me what someone else might be thinking given this information and sort of how they're viewing it. Because I'm like, my worldview, my how everything works just cannot compute that. So I'm like, again, to your point, I want it to play the devil's advocate. I want it to give me the information that sort of challenges my assertions because sometimes, man, like I've had some times where that shit really hit me and I was like, wow, okay. I had never thought of it like that. Holy crap.
I completely get what you're saying. Now, let's move to something very quick, rapid fire questions that I
I
want
love
to
rapid
ask.
fire. Great. Love
Okay,
rapid fire.
so let's jump on those. One book that changed the way you coach.
Ooh, change the way I coach. Man, funny enough, Nutrient Timing by John Ivey way back in the day, even though it probably was too biased for that, but it absolutely changed the way that I coached early on. And then we realized we were wrong, and then we kind of backed away from that. But I definitely remember reading that and being like, wow, nutrient timing is like everything. And we were wrong, but that book stands out to me.
Most misunderstood thing about being disciplined.
Again, I think that it requires this tremendous amount of willpower. The people just have usually have good habits and systems. So that it's like, if you have junk food around you all the time, you're going to eat junk food. So those disciplined people, they just don't get it, right? You just don't buy it. If you don't buy it at the store and it's not in your house, like, you're just not going to eat it. I don't know too many people. Well, now we've got Uber Eats and all that stuff in the US where like you can literally get stuff ordered to your doorstep. But I always used to use the example of if I was trying to wean off of energy drinks, well, if I don't buy them, like I'm not driving up to the store 10 minutes away to get one to come back home. Like that's ridiculous. That's 20 or 30 minutes. No, 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 no. You just don't have them. You're not going to consume them.
Yep. Five. What would be your favorite meal when dieting? You go to
Just, yeah, I mean, chicken, brown rice, broccoli, something like that. That's the most boring shit in the world, but I don't mind it.
one metric that actually matters for progress.
One metric? Do you mean training or diet or either?
Could be either. Could be both.
Diet, body weight, training, oof, man, tracking like a 10 RM over time, probably.
Okay. For those who don't know what 10 RM mean, what
10
what
rep
do you mean?
max.
Yeah.
So if you really want to know if you're getting stronger over time, especially in hypertrophy, if you can go from like back squatting 95 for 10, and that's like really, really hard. Well, a couple months later, if you're doing like 135 for 10, you've probably gotten a lot stronger and grown some muscle.
Worst diet trend of the past 5 years.
Just being extreme. Like anything that preaches extremism, it's like there's no need for it. You just don't need to go that way.
One belief that evolved the most since you started RP.
You want to grow muscle, you have to get really, really big. You have to gain a ton of weight. Biggest regret Mike and I both have. Now he suffered more. I must have better skin or something than he does. He's also a little bit shorter than me, but we both got up to like 260 at one point, and we were both really fat, like 30% plus body fat. We were not gaining much muscle. We were strong as shit, which is cool, but we just thought early on, hey, you just sort of gain weight at all costs, you're going to grow a ton of muscle. Holy shit, it is hard to diet that fat off later, and you've got a lot of it.
Most annoying thing in fitness myths you still hear.
Man, I feel like again, part of it is because I just follow a lot of evidence-based people. I don't see a ton of like bullshit anymore. So I've kind of self-selected out of that. The one that always stood out to me the most is just like low carb. Like you have to go low carb. And it's like there's just no reason you have to go low carb.
Yeah, 100%. Provided that protein and calories are equated, you can choose whichever suits best your preferences. Now, who's who's one non-fitness thinker that's shaped your mindset?
I'm Steven Pinker.
Okay. And same question, but instead of shaped your mindset, shaped your business.
Um, he is kind of in the fitness sphere, so to speak. But so Jocko Willink and his book Extreme Ownership was a good one that I read in like probably about 2018 or 2019 that really stood out to me. Just the idea of extreme ownership. And so if you view it from that lens of like, well, everything's kind of your fault, but that's actually a good thing because that means you can change it. I thought it's always been really instrumental to me. So when you start seeing people that, sorry, I'm just laughing about just recent events in my life, but when you see people that basically blame everyone else for things that go wrong in their life, it's really interesting.
Okay, let's talk about overrated and underrated. Now,
Awesome.
I will give you a statement and you will tell me what you think and a little bit of a rationale why you choose that answer. So, you mentioned meal timing for fat loss. Is that for you right now overrated or underrated?
Overrated. It's more about the daily consumption. It doesn't matter a ton necessarily when you eat it, but just the overall matters more than the timing of it.
AI and algorithm driven nutrition coaching, over or underrated?
It's a good question. I don't necessarily play around with a lot of AI stuff for that very reason. I mean, I would probably say, geez, man, that's a good one. Some of it depends on how you define AI, but I mean, I assume it can do well, so I'm going to say underrated.
Maybe I'm kind of like thinking these apps that you can use to, I don't know, take a picture of the meal and the AI will tell
Overrated.
you,
Overrated.
it will tell you, oh, this is it has X amount of
Yeah.
calories and nutrition, but it can
Right,
be
right now,
way off.
overrated. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
overrated. Yeah.
absolutely. Motivational quotes and mindset post on IG.
I think underrated. I love that. If you look around my room, I've got motivational posters all over my basement, all over my office. I love that stuff. But sometimes, sometimes, you know, what's really interesting is a lot of times if you have that stuff around, it sort of you get desensitized to it. So it's almost like you have to do it in small dosages.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if you have something, you know, kind of staring you in the face all the time, you kind of it doesn't mean as much to you anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
if you kind of sprinkle it in versus all up in your face all the time, it might actually be more helpful for people.
Yeah, because the more you have something staring at you or in a place that you can see it all the time, there's a point that you no longer see it anymore. Like it's part of
Exactly.
the environment.
Yep. Actually, speaking to that point, the kiss of death for a book that I'm going to read, if I put it on my nightstand, I never read it.
Yep.
So it's if I do that, I'm like, oh, okay, apparently I'm never reading this book then. So
Yep, I agree. Now, long maintenance phases after a fat loss block. Under or overrated?
underrated. Yeah, underrated. I think because that goes back to timelines and time horizons. So if you can extend out and you can give yourself more of a break between diet phases, I think you'd be more successful on the next diet.
I agree. The calorie buffer method, banking, borrowing calories.
I think so. Obviously, all this stuff requires a little bit of nuance. I would say overrated in general, especially for people newer to it. If you're much more advanced, I think you can do it. If you're more of a beginner, I don't think you should do it as much.
Explain a little bit about that. So, what is calorie buffer method for those who haven't heard of it?
So I think what you're saying, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think what you're saying is like I'm going to like save some calories at night, or like I'm going to maybe undereat this day so I can overeat the next day or something like that. I think that's what you're getting at, right?
Calorie cycling, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Harder for new people, easier for more advanced people. Does that make sense? Or you want me to elaborate a little bit more?
No, no, I guess wanted to hear from you like how would you implement it in your own terms?
Man, if I, let's say, no, I'm going to go to a birthday party or something like that and have some, really good tasty foods, I'm probably going to either like, maybe not eat before bed or like just have a little small protein shake or something like that. So I'm going to kind of balance out a little bit. I don't know if I necessarily bank calories day to day, so to speak. It's probably for me more of a thing of, yeah, let's say I'm going to go have pizza with some friends or something like that. Like, yeah, of course I want to enjoy it. I'm just not, I might eat a little bit less before and a little bit less after. So it kind of balances out a little bit. Or even if it doesn't, like I don't care about one day going off track because I'll just get back on track the next day and it doesn't really impact stuff. So that's kind of how I view it. It's just, I would say it's overrated for beginners, underrated for more advanced people. Because you can totally, like on the grand scheme of things, it's mostly on a week scale. If you can balance that out. But the problem that, so again, this is really funny that we're having this conversation because I remember having these types of conversations years ago when we were dealing with a lot more people focused on like just diet and training was just not as much involved. And I was always say like you don't want to get in that pattern in that routine of switching things up because like psychologically speaking, some people that's not so great. Because then you're sort of under eating and overeating, and it can maybe lead to some like binge eating stuff. So like I always warn people, just be careful of it. And it's usually something you have to do if you're more advanced. So if you're more advanced, it goes back to auto-regulation. You don't expect a beginner to auto-regulate. They don't really know what it means. Someone that's more advanced, like they know what it means. They've been around the block before, so they can much easier auto-regulate stuff.
Mm, I agree. Now, meal plans.
You mean exact foods?
Yeah, the design meal plan that is given
Yeah,
to you.
way overrated.
Because I remember like RP used to create diet plans and like have these templates.
So, yeah, yeah.
What would you say is the difference between a diet template and I suppose you still guys have those
Yeah. Well,
versus
we don't sell them anymore, but yeah, yeah.
oh
So
okay.
great question. So a diet template just sort of gives you amounts and sort of the blocks to eat, right? Of like, hey, around this time, eat this amount. But then we always gave people a list of foods. So it wasn't like you must eat chicken at 3 p.m. It was like, no, your meal's at 3. Here's like 10 protein options. You get to choose which one. So that way people have the flexibility. Because what we never wanted to do is we never wanted to design those types of meal plans. So that's the distinction for me. A template is a lot different because it gives people more flexibility and options. And that's why people did better with templates than meal plans. Because meal plans are so rigid. I always said, like, why would you want that? Why do you need to tell me I need to eat ground turkey at 3 p.m.? Like, I could, but I could also have salmon. I could have chicken. I could have tuna, like whatever, right? I could have all these different options. So some people like that rigidity. To me, it screams like that's perfection, right? Like that's perfectionism. It's like, no, 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 no. You need some freedom in there to choose. So it's some of the flexible dieting mindset.
And even like taking that or extrapolating that to bodybuilding, like before, like 20, 15 years ago, like a meal plan had to be exact meal, like chicken,
Crazy.
rice, and broccoli, and like you couldn't even deviate from that.
Tilapia. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And nowadays, like you don't need to be
Mhm.
that extreme to still get your best results.
Totally. Because why be more rigid when you can still get really good results of being a little bit less rigid and have a little bit more freedom? People want freedom. People usually want freedom of choice. Now, again, it can't be infinite choices. So you still have to,
Yeah,
condense it a little bit, but give people a few options rather than just one.
absolutely. Fasted cardio.
Overrated? If you want to do it, cool, but there's no reason to, really. Again, aim for step count. I'm a big fan of just step counts.
Yep. Weekend refits.
Overrated to me?
Optimal training programs for Gen Pop clients.
Overrated. Just get people in the gym doing stuff. Like you don't even need to know what the word periodization means if you're training Gen Pop people. Because
Yep.
that's taking time off here and there. Like you just get them in. You only have limited time with them. You just get them in and get them going and just moving, doing the basics, compound basics, probably some supersets, move fast, burn tons of calories. Doesn't need to be optimal.
Tracking compliance with photos instead of macros.
Overrated. It's really hard. I don't have that good of an eye, even after doing this for 20 years. I can't tell.
Now, I guess this is where I want to ask a more like personal question. What is the future like when you think about RP and the vision? Where are you headed? Is there any projects coming for you? Anything that you're working on?
Yeah, it's basically just improving our apps, just continue making them better. If we can just keep making them better and better and better, like we've got no shortage of ideas. We just got to execute. So hopefully in the coming years, our apps are just really better. And people are like, they really want to use them and they really deliver results and they really help a lot of people.
What has been the feedback from the two apps that you have going on at the moment?
Oh, Hypertrophy app was designed for people that are a little bit more serious about training. So the feedback's by and large been pretty good. Diet app needs some new updates and those will be coming here pretty soon. So that diet apps, how about this? Is diet app overrated, hypertrophy app underrated?
I love that. I've been using the hypertrophy app, and I think it is definitely very user friendly. It is really, really
Yeah.
great. The fact that you can make a lot of adjustments on the go, that you can move things around if there's an exercise order that you need to alter. And I think it's awesome. It's awesome. But definitely is targeted to someone who knows already how to train
Sure.
and and
Mhm.
and, and needs just to have a way to have something digitalized to track the training.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, listen, I've used it for basically every session now for about 3 years. I love it. Because you always know you're progressing. So for me, I love the ability to look back and be, okay, what did I do last week? Cool. I know I just need to do a little bit more this week. I can just keep doing that. So I don't really have to think a whole lot about it. For me, so I'm actually a really good client. And so like when Jared coached me the last couple contest preps, I'd be like, Jared, give me the plan, I execute. Like you're a coach. If you get a client like that that has that mindset, they're going to do really well.
Yeah,
Because they just execute. They just do what you tell them. And like I'm a big fan of that. I love that. It's like just tell me what to do. You're the coach. I'm paying you. You're the expert. You tell me what to do and I'll do it. Unless some shit seems really crazy, and then I'll ask some questions, of course. But usually, again, if you're using a trusted coach and all that, like it's not an issue. But I like to throw that caveat in there just in case.
I love that, and I agree. I think one of I guess a question that I'll ask about that hypertrophy app is how accurate and good is predicting your updates for training volumes and sets recommended and weight
Uh,
recommended.
Pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty spot on. Again, I've been using it for so long that I kind of know like the prompts and stuff to hit in there. But again, even knowing that, because I could, I'll routinely add a set here or there, maybe drop one off. Because again, I've been training for so long now, almost 25 years, that I kind of know what to do and what to expect and kind of what's too much for me. But if you just use the prompts just straight up and we're honest with it, it's going to do a really good job.
Yeah, it's tricky because some of those will respond to how well and how accurate you respond to the questions and the feedback.
Yeah.
But if you don't really know, you're probably not giving the right answer. It's just going to probably give you something that you may not expect for the next set.
It could, yeah, it could. I do think that if all of a sudden, if people don't know what they're doing and they did use some of the prompts on the extremes there, yeah, it might bump you up a lot of volume or something like that. But then, like, you're probably going to know pretty quickly once you get to that next workout, you're like, huh, okay, that was too much. And then you rate it as too much. And then it's either going to A, not add anything more, so you won't go above that, or B, it might actually reduce the next time. So
Yeah,
again, it does a pretty good job overall. It's I've been pretty impressed with it and its ability to sort of kind of predict like what kind of numbers that I would get, even if I change the weights around. Like let's say, I drop the weight and it's like it'll kind of predict because it has these ranges sort of built in. It kind of knows based on like this point system that it has. And it's pretty good, man. I've been thoroughly impressed most of the time with it.
is there any future updates that are coming for that app that you think it is still missing?
Well, one, I think it could have better onboarding because, like you said, it was designed for people that are a bit more advanced. So you get someone coming in that doesn't know as much about training. We need to do a little bit better job of explaining what's going on in the app and how it kind of works. I think the ability that it's not in the app stores is probably something that could be greatly improved upon. That'll obviously make it a lot easier to reach out to. And then there's some like little just intricacies in it and the way we recommend stuff based on some feedback and whatnot that can be improved too. But I don't know if people really notice that a whole lot. That's just kind of like an under the hood type thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think overall is amazing. It's a really, really good app.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for putting it out there and just making training a lot more enjoyable. This is all I've got for you. Thank you so much, Nick, for being able
Yeah, of
to
course.
give me
It's
your
great.
time to go through all these questions. Where can people find you?
Yeah, rpstrength.com. That's the best spot. Check out the RP YouTube channel. So it's Renaissance Periodization YouTube channel. Myself personally on Instagram at nick.shaw.rp.
Awesome. Have a great night. And this is going to be up soon in YouTube. And I
Awesome.
appreciate you so much for having the time to be here
Great.
today.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me on. It was great. It was a pleasure.